All right. So, Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the same or the like. Typically, this Nietzsche's recurrence of the same is not taken seriously, it seems. People like to think of it as a thought experiment, a sort of way to look at it. But what I'm going to share with you guys is a way to experience Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the same. And this is a very, it took me a while to sort of take a step back and just experience things, right? Take a step back and really look at what I've been doing. So how do we experience the eternal recurrence of the like? I came up with the idea that we can experience the eternal recurrence of the same daily. And I will make this kind of bold assertion that we do experience the eternal recurrence of the same every single day of our lives. And what inspired me to make this assertion is that the Quran says something about beware of my signs of the alternation of the day and night, right? And these people that know these signs, these are men who understand, right? And I feel like Nietzsche was a man who understood, right, exactly what was going on. And I took the example of the alternating night and day, right, the shifting from night and day, as an understanding for how we experience the eternal recurrence of the same. For example, every morning, right, every morning I get a cup of coffee. There is a sort of likeness to that very next day, right? There's a sense of, I've been here before, yet there is something, yet this day is different, but also at the same time very alike. And so I began to experiment with this sort of experience between night and day. And if you pay attention very closely, if you don't look at your clock and you just experience night and day, it would almost seem that there is a sense of, I have been here before, this has already happened, and this will reoccur, right? It's a simultaneous feeling of when I wake up in the morning or when I wake up in the middle of the night. And I would say probably the middle of the night is a very good experience to talk about, because some people will have anxieties about it already being the next day, yet it hasn't occurred yet, right? The next day hasn't occurred, but because they woke up in the middle of the night, they think it's morning already, right? They just think the sun is about to peak. This is something that is very important, because if we take this experience of how we view night and day, right? Think about how memory causes us to not realize the eternal recurrence. For example, if you were to have completely erased short-term memory, right? If you had a hit to the brain and you weren't able to form short-term memories, every single day of your life from then on, you would feel a sense of knowing, like you have met this person before, and you have been doing this job before, but there is a sense of like, this is not the same day, right? But there's something strange about that day. But memory can also be one that can take you in deeper into the eternal recurrence of the same. For example, I can be here, right? But I can also, through memory, I can relive a moment that has already happened. But at the same time, I can also play that same moment in a different way, in a different possibility. Something that has already happened, that is currently occurring, and that will happen, inside my playful dreams or imagination, you could say. But that the memory thing and the imagination and dreamlike argument, that's a very it's not a solid thought yet, but it is something I think to think about, especially when we think about time, because we always view time as linear, and that's the problem, right? That's the exact problem of why we can't probably experience the eternal recurrence of the same. But to really show the heaviest weight of the eternal recurrence of the same is that it does create an anxiety, right? People go through life experiencing this very mundane living. I have already done this before. It is currently happening. I know what will occur, right? You can take your own job, for example, or being in a relationship with a person for a long time. You already been here before. It's already happening, and you already know what's going to happen, right? It's going to occur again. But I want to be very careful about this sort of having a repetition mindset, because it's not a repetition. The same way, even though there is a likeness of yesterday being leaked into today, it is not a repetition, but there is a sense of likeness, right? And my body has accumulated all these habits to make me be aware that, yes, this is a new day, but there is at the same time a very familiar feeling, a very daunting feeling if I am not paying attention. I would say those who are not aware of the eternal recurrence of the same, they get caught into their very mundane life. They feel like they can't escape it. This nothingness reveals the anxiety, or rather, the anxiety reveals the nothingness. An anxiety that in society we can't understand, right? We try to understand, but there is this sense of, depression, and we try to cope with other things, but at the same time, people who are very aware of this are those who experience the nothingness without actually being aware of the nothingness. And again, I'm just experiencing with you guys, sharing my thoughts on how the eternal recurrence of the same is a very impactful thing, right? It is the heaviest weight when one does not realize it. And it gets, utterly scary when one is actually aware of this anxiety, right? That's when people start saying, like, this life is meaningless, right? I'm just doing what it feels like, the same things over and over again. Every morning I get my coffee, and I read the newspaper, then I go back, then I work, and I go back to sleep. And then the next day I do the same thing over again. But, again, I bring caution about looking at it as a repetition. There is just a likeness. What's beautiful about the likeness of the next day, you could say, or of the very day that you are in right now, is that we know that it's coming, that it will happen. And in this way, once we're aware of this very likeness as it's coming forward to us, that is when now we can embrace a new what for, a new possibility to affirm life. This idea of the alternation between night and day has really struck me as, we experience actually the eternal recurrence of the same, of the like, every single day of our lives. And again, there is a great anxiety, a heavy weight that comes with acknowledging this eternal recurrence. But that is also at the same time what is most beautiful. Once you realize and you embrace the eternal recurrence of the same, then you can now bring forth your new what for, as Nietzsche would say, your new horizon. And the very interesting thing is you can actually take this new horizon not just as a metaphor, but as a literal thing, right? That sort of common saying, tomorrow's a new day. But I want to make it also very clear, even though tomorrow is a new day, tomorrow has that very same likeness if you do not choose to engage with the eternal recurrence of the same. Right? It is that will to power, this letting go of amor fati. I feel like I could probably talk about this forever, but I just wanted to sort of talk about how Nietzsche's eternal recurrence of the like is not something that is a thought experiment. It is very much real. You can very much experience it in your life. Every single day there is a likeness that if you're not paying attention to, it only feels like a very mundane repetition. But if you actually become more aware of this likeness, and it brings forth an opportunity for you every moment, because you know it's going to occur, that it will occur, that it has occurred, then that's when you can input your new what for. In this case, it would be the amor fati that Nietzsche speaks of, the love of what is all that is necessary, the idea of letting go. I think if we acknowledge that the eternal recurrence is not circular but a movement, and that what Nietzsche is asking us to acknowledge in his embracing of amor fati is that love itself is the best movement in which to bring forth a new possibility, a new what for. It is love itself that will bear the great burden of the eternal recurrence of the same. It is what will bring forth creative love, right? This constant going that we must embrace. And in this embrace, we affirm life, and at the same time affirm the eternal recurrence of the like, and embrace the highest will to power, the amor fati. I've always very much enjoyed the idea of love as a movement. I think that very much I think it really breaks down or at least it really explains the symptoms of society today, where we are seeking permanence, right? Where we look at love as a goal, as a objective, when in reality, if we look at amor fati as a movement, just as the eternal recurrence, then There is no searching, there is no looking. It is only being, acknowledging this will to power. And in that sense, there is a sense of going beyond. There is a sense of going beyond good and evil, going beyond the idea of opposites, right? Because in this movement, there is inclusive multiplicities and likeness, but at the same time, it is one organic unity, one whole movement, especially when we get rid of our idea of linear time and start paying more attention to how we experience time, how we experience the eternal recurrence of the same. And I think that is all that I have to say about that. I hope that is helpful to sort of look at the eternal recurrence as a more serious thing, as something that you can experience every single day of your life. But there's always that new what for that lingers in every occurrence.